I remember it was the summer before my senior year in high school. It was a very hot afternoon. My father and I were preparing the prune orchard for the harvest. We would move from tree to tree, propping the limbs that sagged under the weight of the eggplant-colored fruit. I remember my father had his customary cigar stub in his mouth. Occasionally he would light it and take a couple of puffs, only to have it go out again. Suddenly he stopped working. He looked over the orchard. Then he turned to look at me. "You know, mijo," he said, "you don't have to be a farm worker like me. I want you to be anything you want, but not this. This is very hard work, getting up at dark, coming home at dark. It will kill you." He said, "You can do anything you want, but don't do this."
And with those words, a world of opportunities suddenly opened up for a young man who until then had thought farm work was his only choice. Through hard work, perseverance, and his family support, Ernesto Olivares has created a life of significant achievements. And all along the way, he has shared his father's words with young people, reaching out and offering them the world of possibilities his father offered him. Ernesto Olivares embodies the principles of scouting, not only in his own life, but in his passion for young people's futures. Here is his story. He was born November 7th, 1957, in León, Guanajuato, Mexico, the fourth of 7 children. The family was incredibly poor. Their home was adobe, and the floor compacted soil, mere dirt that his mother swept with a simple straw broom. In 1960, his father obtained visas for his mother, Ernesto, his brother Francisco, and himself. They moved to California, first living with family in Fresno and then settling in Colusa, where his father got a permanent job working in prune orchards. Eventually, his father was able to obtain visas for the rest of the family. He also became a foreman, and the owner of the orchard built them a small house with real floors, but no insulation or heating system. Ernesto tells kids today that he was born dirt poor in Mexico, but his father brought him to the United States for a better life of poverty. Everybody worked to support the family. They would start in the prune orchard just as the sun was rising and the air was cool. By 10 a.m., the sun was fierce, and so they would take a break, find some shade, and eat the breakfast burritos their mother had prepared early that morning, sitting on their upturned buckets as they ate. Then it was back to work. Ernesto's mother would rake the fallen prunes into piles on the shady side of the trees for the children to pick up. Their father made it a competition, with their family the home team. The goal was to have more bins with the Olivares name on them than any other when the flatbed truck was loaded. When their harvest was completed, they moved on to other orchards in the area. And when school started in the fall, they worked after school and Saturdays picking walnuts. In the 5th grade, Ernesto noticed a classmate who wore a blue uniform to school once a week. Curious, he asked the boy about it, and the boy told him about Cub Scouts and making neat stuff out of wood and leather. Ernesto was fascinated. Somehow, his father found the money for the uniform, and Ernesto joined scouting. He entered a new world of activities and friends who had color TVs, wall-to-wall carpeting, and forks and knives that matched. In junior high school, he joined the Webelos and eventually became leader of the Woodchuck Patrol of Troop 32. Even with the demands of the harvest, he continued with scouting to the rank of star, an achievement only 12% of scouts achieve. But in high school, he needed to take on more responsibility in the orchards his father managed and had to drop scouting. At the time, it seemed reasonable since Ernesto knew he was going to farm for the rest of his life, until his father set him free that hot day. After high school, Ernesto was drawn to police work, although even today he can't tell you exactly why. But a career as a cop wasn't going to be easy. At 5'5", he was too short. Now the boy whose father had told him he could be anything he wanted found out that maybe he couldn't, but he didn't give up. He continued his education in the field of law, while the height limitation was being challenged in the courts. It was found to be unconstitutional, and Ernesto finished his AA degree and became a community resource officer for the city of Live Oak. In 1978, after he graduated from the police academy, he applied for a position in Santa Rosa. On Monday, April 30th, 1979, he stood on the steps of the Santa Rosa Police Department, a newly sworn-in police officer and much taller than 5'5". He figured it couldn't get any better. But it did. He moved through a variety of assignments during his tenure as a SR cop. including management of patrol operations, the crisis negotiation team, recruiting and hiring, and sex crime and violence investigations. In the early 1980s, he was one of 2 officers selected to work crimes against children, including physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, and the tragic unexpected deaths. But keeping the streets and the young people safe wasn't enough for Ernesto. He knew how it felt to be dirt poor. He knew how it felt to be an outsider. He knew what it meant to take nothing for granted, and he wanted to make it easier for those coming behind him, particularly one of our most vulnerable populations, our youth. He wanted young people to believe what his father had taught him, that they could do anything they wanted. So he made time to work with community organizations. In the early 1980s, he was appointed to the Sonoma County Commission on Human Rights, where he focused his attention on improving the community's relationship with law enforcement, particularly with respect to racial profiling and immigration issues. He joined the board of the Volunteer Center and the St. Joseph Health System Community Benefit Committee, where he was able to help the uninsured, something he knew firsthand growing up as a farm worker's child. Later, he served on the board of trustees for Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital. In 2004, Ernesto was promoted to lieutenant. Although his father had died in 1988, Ernesto knew in his heart that his dad had followed his Mio every day since then, and that he was with him as his mother pinned on his lieutenant's badge and blessed him during the swearing-in ceremony at City Hall. In 2006, he was offered the job of managing the Santa Rosa Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force. Now Ernesto had come full circle, from the young man standing in the prune orchard with his father that day, to the adult reaching out to other young men and women to tell them that the world was full of opportunities for them. His life story could be a lesson. He threw himself into the job, as he had thrown himself into every chance he was given to make life a little better for those who needed it. Santa Rosa was awarded the prestigious title of All-America City in 2007, thanks in large part to his leadership. One story of many shows how significant this move to the Santa Rosa Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force was, both to Ernesto and the young people he was dedicated to. Colusa, his family home, was plagued with gang violence. A 15-year-old boy had been shot and killed only a mile from where Ernesto's mother still lived. Ernesto, now the chair of the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force and a member of the Santa Rosa City Council, returned to his town to help. His partner in this effort was the Colusa County Superintendent of Schools, Kay Spurgeon, whose family had owned the walnut orchards Ernesto and his family had harvested after they'd finished their work with the prunes. In 2008, Ernesto was looking at retirement from the police force, but he knew his commitment to the community and its young people wasn't yet complete. He had more to do, so he ran for Santa Rosa City Council and was elected the first Latino to achieve that office. 2 years later, the council bestowed their trust in his leadership by electing him their mayor. When asked what was the highlight of his 2 years as mayor, Ernesto says it was the privilege of delivering the commencement address to the 2011 graduating class at Elsie Allen High School. He had spoken with a small group of students earlier in the year. Like so many others, the kids had been awestruck when he shared his childhood story. The mayor was like them. To this day, he meets young people and their parents who thank him for his speech. This last year, Ernesto was elected to another 4-year term on the council. His campaign was highlighted by a precedent-setting pledge between him and newcomer Aaron Karlstrom to work across the aisle as moderate and progressive, hopefully bringing on a new spirit of cooperation to politics. Now, with the daily pressure of mayor behind him, he is able to spend more time with his wife Rita and their blended family. Their oldest daughter is a school teacher and expecting her first child in April. Another daughter is currently working at SSU, and their youngest daughter attends SSU, where she is working toward a degree in nursing. In conclusion, Ernesto's life work is embodied in a parable where a Native American boy talks with his grandfather. "What do you think of the world situation?" the young boy asks his grandfather. The grandfather replies, "I feel like wolves are fighting in my heart. One is full of anger and hatred. The other is full of love, forgiveness, and peace." The boy asks the old man, "Which one will win?" The grandfather replies, "The one I feed." Throughout his life, Ernesto Olivares has diligently fed the wolf of love with his dedication to young people and his community.